Kia ora and welcome to How to Smash the Motherhood Penalty, the podcast where we get curious about a system where all parents pay some kind of a price, but it's only mothers that are paying a financial price. I'm your host, Emma McLean. I'm an executive coach and a mum of three. Join me as I interview experts in all different fields on what the motherhood penalty is, how it impacts us, and what we can do to smash it. Welcome back, it's your friend Emma, and today I am delighted to have Jane Sweeney and Carolyn Kerr here. Jane and Carolyn are co-founders of a leading communications and marketing agency, Anthem, which they set up in 2014. They've worked together and been great friends for 20 years and have a shared commitment to family first policies, which is why I am so delighted, and I've been on their wait list for years to get onto the podcast. Jane is one of the PR industry's most experienced and respected professionals and has run agencies in New Zealand and the UK, including a top 10 Marcoms agency in London, and served as Trade Commissioner for NZTE in Paris. Named the doyen of the small cadre of PR women with serious clout by the New Zealand Listener Influentials issue, Jane started her career in consumer and marketing communications and is skilled at strategic reputation management, assisting directors and company senior executives plan their stakeholder engagement, integrated communications, and corporate affairs management. Carolyn brings her hallmark warmth and grace to all interactions, combined with a single-minded focus on building a high-performing team to ensure Anthem's clients receive the best counsel possible. A strategic communications advisor dedicated to both corporate and marketing communications, Carolyn integrates this rare blend of expertise and skills to devise complex strategies and campaigns that deliver business outcomes for clients. Her North Star is enhancing brand preference and building reputations while mitigating risks. Jane has held several board positions and was instrumental in founding Global Woman, of which she and Carolyn are both active members, and Jane has served on its board. Carolyn is a board member of the Middlemore Foundation and a member of New Zealand Football Women's Committee. Both are purpose-led and advocate for the business benefits of diversity in leadership. They are proud mums and shared raising their kids with wonderfully involved husbands. And Jane is also a fanatical grandmother, which I can totally imagine and may have even seen photographic evidence of. Welcome, Jane and Carolyn. So nice to have you here. I want to throw it to you, Carolyn, first. Do you want to introduce yourself, share anything else with my listeners?
Well, kia ora, and thanks, Emma, so much for that warm introduction. I'm sure Jane wrote mine and I might have added to her intro. But yeah, look, we have worked together for 20 years. Jane's an absolute inspiration to me, and we've held a number of senior roles together, and I guess have kind of evolved our approach to running businesses in sync with each other. So my background, apart from what you've just described, Emma, is I am a mother of two children, now teenagers, nearly 17. Aidan is nearly 17 and Eloise is nearly 15. So into a different kind of era of motherhood than obviously previous when they're preschoolers and primary school. They're much more independent. I worked part-time after my maternity leave for some time and then returned to work after Aidan was 10 months and shared that parental leave for a number of months with my husband, Simon. So he finished it off and then took another few months off to look after him. So I returned to work, and then when he returned to work, we both worked part-time. So he had Friday off, I had Monday off, which meant that we could both continue to be hands-on parents and limit the amount of time that he was in daycare or care outside of the home. So that was quite different in those days for him to take that on. And even now, I think it's quite rare that a partner would take some of that parental leave and take time off. But it worked really, really well for us. So, look, I think for us, flexibility has been an easy thing to build into our working lives and home lives because we're both of the same value set, and to also work with employers at those times that embraced it. So he works in healthcare, so often a female dominated sector. So his desire to be a hands-on dad as well as balance work was never questioned in his environment, but he was unique in that none of his mates had taken off time from work over that time. So it was kind of lonely back sort of 17 years ago. You'd go into parent rooms and he'd be the only dad, and it was uncomfortable, didn't have a coffee group. So that circle was quite limiting for him. But it did mean that he kind of carved a path and has inspired other guys to think about it since and consider it, and also has become a real role model for our son, who loves children and babies and would love to aspire to be an active dad in the future too when he gets to that age group. So that's a bit more about me, the personal backdrop to
Amazing.
what's driven me.
Amazing. Oh, I mean, when I hear you talk that back, flexibility, shared parenting, it's in your DNA now, isn't it? Because it was right from the start.
Really is. Yeah, really is. And I'll segue to Jane because she really pioneered that too with her husband Mark in the earliest stage of their family life.
Jane, tell us your story, my friend.
Thank you, Emma. Kia ora. So good to be here. We're just delighted to be on your podcast. And as Cara mentioned, we've known each other for 20 years. We're great friends as well as running the agency together. In the last agency where we met, I was MD and Cara was working there as a consultant, and I immediately identified her as a rising star. We do have complementary skills and shared values, as Cara mentioned, and a real vision to create an agency and a workplace that challenges industry norms. Agencies are typically quite sweatshoppy, and we just did not want that. We wanted something quite different. So, yeah, Cara's kids are just glorious. Her son is fantastic with my grandbabies and is just obviously a hallmark dad who has really paved the way for him. My husband Mark and I, we have 3 sons. They're all grown up and they have lived overseas for a long time, but now one of them with 3 children is back in New Zealand. When we first got engaged over 40 years ago, would you believe, my husband, this is 4 years before we had a child, asked if he could raise our children. And I had never met a man like that. I didn't really even know what a feminist was. I didn't think I was one, but I soon found out I was. What it meant was that I had to go and get a serious career. And I ended up becoming the first female partner at a PR firm that I joined. And of course, I was the first woman to get pregnant in a senior role. Would you believe, Emma, I had to take annual leave to have my baby. There was no maternity leave back in the day, and to retain my job. And my job was under question because I was pregnant. Would I come back and would I be able to operate, etc.? My husband immediately, of course, he jumped into his role, and he would bring our son to my work twice a day. I breastfed him in the car park or in a park, in a car, because there were no rooms to do the same thing. My husband experienced mother and baby rooms and mother and baby coffee groups, literally gender specific. He couldn't go. So he used to change the kids, our son used to change him on the car bonnet when he was out. It was just ridiculous. So both of us really experienced stigma at first hand. And unfortunately, some of the worst of it came from other women, which was a sad thing. I now balance work. I've gone part-time. For the first time in 40 years, I work 4 days a week, but I'm flexible over the week so I can have time with my grandkids. I'm not a direct caregiver. I am at times, but for me, it's part of my aspiration to be a really active grandmother and to make sure I have time with them where I really feel I missed out with our children. I would have liked more time with them, but certainly flexibility wasn't an option back in the day. And the way that Cara and I work it all depends. I don't have a fixed day. I sometimes take 2 half days. Depends what we have on in the week. I literally work my diary around the business, and it works really well for the family as well.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing your story, Jane. The very definition of a groundbreaker dad your husband was, right? So amazing. Both of your stories. I know that so many of my listeners will find that inspirational. And I want to talk about Anthem. 14 years ago, you, as Jane said, you didn't want to set up a sweatshop. You wanted to set up something different, but you set up an agency, right? And agencies have clients and they have demanding clients. How do you talk about your family first sort of philosophy and the grounding, but how do you make that work while delivering to client needs? Anyone can go with that one.
Okay.
Pokey. Well, I'll kick
We're
off.
very polite, aren't we?
We are. I'll kick off and then
Very
Carolyn
polite.
can chip in. So you're right, Emma. We operate in a really fast-paced industry with urgent client needs, and it is relentless. But we have focused, Carolyn and I were absolutely determined to build a culture of trust and flexibility. We allow employees to manage their own workloads. If they work longer one week, they take time back the following week. We consider everybody as an adult. We have strong values in our business and we trust people. Caro.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in terms of the way we think about flexibility, it's not gender bound. You know, we're not thinking about flexibility just for working mums. It's really for us, it's across the board. So we, you know, if people in our team want to care for others that are in their lives, whether that's aging parents or a friend who's going through a tough time, or for themselves, if there's things that they want to balance and actually commit to other things like additional learning or learning something new, that's meaningful for them, we will support that, whether it's travel or study or caregiving and things like that. So, you know, we've got a range of people working in part-time roles across our business. We actually worked out it's half of our team work flexibly or part-time. And then, of course, that's modelled through our agile workforce as well, where we have a range of people that really work flexibly with us across the business. So it just means that it's set up in a way that adapts to people's age and stage of where they're at. If they've got challenging moments in their lives, they need to adapt the way they work for a period of time. We're really open to that. It just means, though, that you need to have really open dialogue and conversations with people about what they're doing. So regular check-ins, how are you doing? How are you feeling? You know, how's that going for you? Is it working for you? So when we do professional development conversations or performance reviews and things like that, as well as we have one-on-one coaching buddy program in our team. And so we'll ask the business kind of questions, the professional development type questions, but also the how you're finding things questions. You know, I know you've got that going on, so how can we best support you? So what resources do you need? What policies do we need to sharpen up or introduce? Things like that. So it's not just a policy on a piece of paper. It really is an action. We're trying to keep that quite alive and active. Yeah.
We do. And I think for Carolyn and I, when we were talking about this, it's been an evolving thing for us, Emma. It's evolved and we really feel we've honed it over the years. We did start Anthem with absolute flexibility was core for us since day one. So when it came along, to everyone's surprise during COVID, we're going, what? You know, like it was just normal for us. It didn't seem like we couldn't even understand what people talked about really. So we've had, it has been core since day one. We've had job shares, phased returns, part-time roles, remote work from anywhere. I mentioned I had my 3 sons overseas, so I have done a lot of work overseas, and I just work the time frame around when people are available in New Zealand, and other team members have as well. Everything's based on outcomes. So we are there to achieve our outcomes for clients, and as long as we're doing that, we're responsible adults and we can work out how we can make things work. We've hired people during pregnancy, we've promoted them on parental leave, we've supported sabbaticals, we've welcomed grandparents or older people caring for their parents back into the business. So we actively discourage ageism. We offer part-time work, rolling flexible contracts to people beyond just mums. And we even, would you believe, created paternity leave, PAW, ternity leave, for people who have fur babies. Because for some people, they are their only babies and they're super important to them. So yes, we have paternity leave.
That's a New Zealand Herald headline I didn't know I needed. That was great. I just love listening to both of you talk about this, right? It's just the way you've built your business. It's the way that your business operates.
Just the norm
and
for us.
Some key things I heard. Just the norm. Trust. Open communication. How are you really? What else do you need? Belief in people, I guess. Belief that we all are actually trying to do a good job, but we have other responsibilities. whether that is to aging parents, whether that is to a sick dog, whether that is to children, is something like 75% of a workforce are caregivers. It's not a niche thing.
It's not a niche thing. The other thing is we don't call work-life balance. We just talk about balancing life, because work is part of life and it ebbs and flows just as your personal life does. So it's really, I guess, demonstrating that that's okay too. As humans, we need to adapt to our lives. So trust and communication, two very important things. Openness to learn and listen to each other as well. What else is going on in the business, and how do we need to potentially step up at different moments when people need to step out. So thinking about that, how we manage that, and then just celebrating diverse work styles and different ways of working. We have an agile workforce, which means that we have a variety of different contracts that people operate under, depending on what they've got on and what they need. So it's not a one size fits all anymore, and we need to reflect that in our workplaces these days. So it's really important for retention of good talent, when their careers develop and evolve as well. And they might want to do other things like take on governance roles or be involved in an advisory capacity somewhere else with a not-for-profit or something like that. How do you allow people to build in a richer work life than just their primary role that also enriches our business and our team, and they bring learnings back and new contacts and connections and things. So
I love that. Thinking really broadly about this, and it definitely not traditional. And so much goodness in that. Everyone can be their best. So I love that. Caro, when I say the words to you, motherhood penalty, what comes up for you? What does that word mean for you?
Yeah, I guess for me it's around the bias and barriers that mothers often do face, even today's day and age, which is bonkers. But, it's lower pay, fewer promotions, I think slower career progression because they've taken time off to be a caregiver and to prioritise their child, and why should they be penalised for that? And it's not like when mothers return to the workforce, they're bringing only half of their skills and capability back. If they return after having children, they are still, contributing to the same level. So doesn't mean that it's part-time value as well that they're providing. So I think for me, it's about everything that impacts mums. And then ultimately it shows up at the end of our careers when we enter retirement, when we know it's about 30% retirement gender gap, when we get to that end of life that we really must address, because it just means that after working and raising a family all their lives to then see that and what can provide them with a dignified retirement's not okay.
Amazing. I mean, Jane, what about you? What does motherhood penalty mean to you?
Well, it's definitely about a bias and barriers that mothers face. It's just rampant, Emma, and we are constantly shocked. We had a recent example just a couple of weeks ago with a new hire who told us that we were the only company, she's a young mum, the only company that would offer her a part-time role with flexible working options. I was really stunned. I thought, jeepers, we haven't come that far. But it often means things like fewer promotions. It's slower. People who are very capable just don't get on in their career. It's ridiculous. For us, we just don't feel you have to choose between family and ambition. We never have. Part-time work doesn't mean that you're working at half-mast. It doesn't mean that your experience isn't growing. It doesn't mean that you're operating at any level beyond what you did when you were full-time. You're still as experienced, you're still as valuable. And both Carolyn and I have had, horrific moments where we've heard both men and women talk about the difficulty of employing women at childbearing age. I mean, it's just horrifying to us. And I remember a specific experience where I had Carolyn and other senior women in leadership when I was MD. I wanted to bonus the senior team, and they were part of that. And my boss thought it was very strange. He was opposed to me rewarding what he called those part-time women. And he didn't even know their names. He knew the blokes' names, but those part-time women, are you serious? It's just, I was just gobsmacked. But we also think it's about dads. It's about normalising men working part-time to reduce stigma and share caregiving equally. Carolyn and I were talking about this earlier, and we just wondered if the motherhood penalty should probably be renamed the part-time penalty. You're just not seen to be serious about your career. And we know of several men who've been in this boat. You're just not seen to be serious about your career if you opt to work part-time. And we wonder if that puts some men off childbearing, essentially, caregiving for their children.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a very good point. And I work with mums and dads as a coach. I run workshops with mum and dads. And one thing I still see in 2025 is that my dads will sit down, if they're in a heterosexual couple, they will have a conversation with their partner. They will both agree that they want to share the childcare and do 4 days a week each. And when the dad goes in to ask at work, he is genuinely fearful. He is genuinely fearful. And if we don't change the experience for our dads of asking for flexible work, reduced work, being able to take a sick day, nothing will change for women. Like, that's the lever, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a cultural lever because the policies are probably there.
That's right.
Yes,
I
we
remember
agree.
years ago when both my children were preschool, so we are going back, 10, 12 years ago. And I hope my husband doesn't mind me sharing this story because it was a previous employer. When he had taken a couple of days off when our children were both sick, and his employer said, well, why is your wife not taking time off? I hope your wife's taking some time off as well to look after them. Why is it you doing it? So he pushed back on that one, of course, because we both had taken time off that week as well. So he said, no, it's all in balance. We're doing our fair share, So just that kind of reaction, that was surprising at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think sickness is a really hard thing for parents with young children because they are sick a lot. And sometimes it's the first time in our career we have had something unpredictable and frequent occur, and if you are for people who are parenting alone, this is next level hard. But if you are partnered, it turns into an Olympics of whose meeting is more important.
Trade-offs, exactly. I can do until 10, and then can you do that bit? And then I'll dial in, and oh gosh, absolutely. You become super organised, don't you? You become super organised for sure.
It's interesting. It's even more. For me. It's even more anatomical than that. And I'm going to mention a body part here. But I remember when I was going back to work after our first son, my darling husband, and I won't say which organisation he called, but he said, he phoned an organisation, said, I'm going to need to supplement my wife's breastfeeding when she goes back to work. And this response from the person on the end of the phone was, you poor man, how will you possibly cope? And why can't she stay home and breastfeed the child? And he said, because we've chosen that she'll be the primary earner in our family. It was staggering. So, sorry about mentioning body parts, but, it even comes down to anatomical things. I mean, women have to have the baby. They have to be pregnant. They want to breastfeed, all of those things, as well as look after children when they're sick. So it's tricky. So all of that's part of the motherhood penalty, of course.
It is. And I think it's complicated. It's complicated because some of it is physical, and also we have a lot of beliefs around what a mum is and what a dad is, and you overlay that onto our current soup we are all swimming in, which has told women that they can be anything they want but hasn't told men that they can be at home. It gets very complicated, and what I'm curious about is, if you put on the lens of the employer, okay, as you are both fantastic employers, what would your advice be to other employers, if they are listening, on how you might minimize the motherhood penalty? Like, what would you be saying to them?
Well, one thing, we wanted to talk about our learnings, and we've had a lot of them. One of them was that job shares turn into a surprising benefit. We did a client audit after we'd been doing some job sharing, which frankly is an hour on a Wednesday. That's the only cost to the business. is that the files are shared for an hour on a Wednesday. If one person works front end of the week and the other works the back end of the week. The research that we did was that clients valued having two senior brains on their file. And we couldn't believe that. It was an upside. And of course, so they just felt that they had more benefit. We would encourage people to constantly review their policies and work out if they're fit for purpose. So we just have started thinking about, we've had a bit of grief in our business, people experiencing grief. We've started thinking about going above and beyond the norm because, frankly, you're not over someone close to you dying in 3 days. It just doesn't work like that. So we constantly review our policies, and we're thinking about things like anticipatory grief. How do people cope before the person dies? So what do you do to help that person? How do they take care of themselves during that time? And I think our overall learning is that employers really need to think about staff members' aspirations. It's not just caring for others. They want to care for others, of course they do, but we started focusing on young mums, and we now apply this policy across the board, as Carolyn mentioned earlier. So things like sabbaticals, flexible working. If you want to go, and we had one staff member who wanted to go and learn to be a yoga teacher, so that was all fine with us. People need to live fulsome lives, and our view is that you have much more satisfied staff members. And I think, Cara, do you want to talk about the results that we've seen out of this in terms of our staff engagement?
Yeah. So every 6 months, we survey our team around, particularly when it comes to wellbeing, flexibility, the way they're working, the way we're working, are the policies in our employee value proposition, are they working for people as things evolve and change? And we're absolutely thrilled the last time we did it that we received 100% recognition or 100% of our employees feel that their home and work balance is right, because we go into the office 2-3 times a week, and then we work from home on the other days, but we'll go into the office when we need to, for client workshops or face-to-face and things like that. So that really works well for our team as well. When they're not always travelling on the road, they can be much more productive. They can go to the cross-country, run with their child. They can go to a doctor's appointment with a loved one, etc. So that works really well. And also that 100% would recommend Anthem as a great place to work. So I feel like, as Jane said, flexibility and being adaptable and thinking about the fact that everyone is different and we're employing humans, we employ humans, so we're all different. We all have different needs. So if you think about audience first, and we're in communication, so we're always thinking about, who's the stakeholder, who's the customer, that sort of thing. What are their needs? And you've got to meet people where they are. So I think our advice would be to really understand what your individuals and your team need, what your team as a whole would want to see you provide in terms of the kind of environment that you structure and design and create together. And over time, we've actually co-created that with our team. So we've had workshops with our team, and we've focused on things like flexible working and work conditions and ways of working, things like that. Our whole workshops have been focused on that and co-designing it together, so they get to put their input, their flavour into it. And all these cool things have come up. I think actually paternity leave was something that someone suggested, like when you get a new puppy, you're supposed to stay with them and be at home for days on end, kind of thing. And so how are you supposed to do that? You don't want to necessarily take your annual leave. So people take paternity leave, so they still work from home, but they can just stay at home and do it that way. So for us, it's about attracting talent and retaining people, because it means that they're not kind of thinking about the stuff that can actually challenge them doing their best work. If they're worried about trying to fit into that 40-hour in the office 100% of the time structure, which we've actually heard, Jane and I have heard kind of coming back in large corporates and things, is that expectation of being in the office all of the time and focusing on that. And we think you can still get the balance right of building culture, building connection, people learning from each other in person, if you're focused on it, as well as giving people the ability to juggle.
Cara, when I hear you and Jane talk that back, what I hear is an organisation that truly does put humans at the centre, that truly does put people at the centre. And that's where you get curious first. Like even the grief observation you've made.
Yes.
That and for me, I'm going to call that innovation. Because it is innovative. When you were both talking that back, I used to be, in my first career, I was in marketing, and then I was in customer experience, and then I was in employee experience. And my favorite quote is, when you look after your people look after your customers, and your customers look after your business. And so many of us focus on the business, but what if we focus on the people, right? And for me, you and Jane are not just saying that, you're doing it. And so I want to acknowledge that. And I also don't want to apologize for the fact that you're going to have so many CVs coming your way when this goes live.
Thanks, Emma. That's hilarious. That's just interesting, actually. We do feel really grateful because we do get people coming to us before roles we advertised. We have a lot of people coming to us seeing if there will be roles, in 6 months or a year's time or whatever. And we've also had a lot of returners. We've had people multi-times round that have come back to us. And so we love that. And then we were a finalist last year in the Future of Work, the Heron's Future of Work, which was we were delighted by. And it just is so heartening to see people who actually do put their employees first and actually think if they are the primary audience you should care for before your clients. You need to look after them and make sure that they are really fulfilled and doing work that they love and are feeling like they're able to have a great life as well as
and I like that like the life balance you talk about. And again, I've got a marketing background, so we always used to talk about moments of truth for customers or key pain points or whatever, and it's saying, well, what is going on for the people that work with us? Like what's on their load? What could is there a role for us here,
Totally.
Yeah, how can we support them? Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing for us as employers, and we would encourage other employers to think about, is you don't have all of the answers and you are busy running a business and you've got competing demands and priorities and things like that. So being open to feedback from team members, or gosh, did you know that person's struggling at the moment with this particular situation? And so just having, I guess, an openness to hearing about what's not going so well, so you've got the opportunity to help fix it, or for us to think about something new that might need to be introduced into the business. So we really embraced that COVID period. It was easy for us to switch into online. It wasn't always pleasant because we're very social people. We do like being around each other a lot. So that was kind of tough, but to kind of shift like that was easy, and then it created opportunities for us to introduce new ways of working that have stuck.
Totally. Yeah. I think one other piece of advice Cara and I would both have for employers, just pay equity does our hidden, and pay equity has never been an issue for us. Emma, we set pay based on skill, contribution and leadership, not gender. And we don't agonise over it, but we're very particular. Carolyn and I will sit and debate a person's contribution to the business until we're happy we've got it right. It's nothing to do with them being part-time. It's nothing to do with their gender. So for us, pay equity is a big issue that New Zealand hasn't cracked it. We were horrified, we're concerned about the way that the Equal Pay Amendment Bill went through. We just felt that reinforced undervaluation of women's work. And we really feel that true progress requires policies that value caregiving and female-dominated professions. But corporations and employers it's one thing you can really look at and sort. It's not okay to pay women less if they're doing the same work, just because you've got bands. We just gotten outside of the bands and said, well, what is this person's true contribution? How does it, and you can measure it and you can have a good look at it, so that's another thing we would encourage employers to do.
I love that. And I would add to that, your approach of curiosity about our people's lived experience. So, like in terms of the pay gap in large corporates, and sometimes corporates might say, well, we've tried everything, but we can't get any woman at the GM level or at the C-suite level, and it's, not our fault. And I'm like, well, what does that look like up there? What does that role look like? And are your women self-selecting out about 5 years before? Because I've seen up there, and it's like getting curious around what do people need. I work with a lot of big firms who say we want more women partners, and then I will coach these coachees, and they're like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that life.
Exactly.
You know, it's getting curious about this.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
I also remember when Global Women were setting up Champions for Change, I remember having a conversation with a service firm about their partnership, and they were saying, Jane, we just can't get women into partnership. And I'm going, well, what are your criteria? They have to have 5 years of continuous service. And I said, well, what age are they? So, oh, whoopsie, those are their childbearing years. Well, they won't be continuous. What about 5 years of stellar service? You know, why does it have to be continuous? Can't they go on maternity leave and come back? So, you know, it's that policy thing, Emma. It's looking at it and going, well, actually, this doesn't make sense, or it's biased towards the male workforce.
Yeah. And it's curiosity, curious about other people's lived experiences and not look like yours, maybe.
Open to learn, I think, on top of that curiosity is actually open to taking the learnings, though, even though sometimes it can be quite hard as an employer.
Yes.
You know, you're running a business and you do have to think about, well, what, through a fairness lens, what's fair for the whole team as well. And that's where we start from, is that feels like it only advantages a certain subset. So how do we make this, as Jane said before, you know, gender neutral, not about age? That's really important for us too, that all of our team can see themselves in the policies and that they've had a hand in creating them.
An unexpected and good example of that, I got feedback a few years ago about the fact that only mums took holidays during the school holidays, and other staff members who didn't have children couldn't take time off in those periods. And I thought, well, there's a fairness issue there. That's not right. So I get that mums have to take holidays during the school holidays, but if someone wants to head off overseas because that's the best time for their family during the school holiday period and they're not married and they don't have children, we need to make that possible for them. So it works both ways. You can't just have privilege for one part of the business.
No. Hey, just to build on that, sorry, I'm on a roll now with this point, is thinking about people that choose to work full time, you've got to also make sure that they're not penalised by picking up the slack of people that are working part time, so that they, having been in a part time role before, that sense of handing off to someone that you need to do for continuity, particularly in a professional services business like ours, is really important. So making sure that people that work full time know that they can balance any extra work that they might need to do by balancing the hours the next week, for example, if they've had to work late on a Friday because they've picked it up because the person that would normally have handled something has Fridays off, that they know that they can come in late the next week or what have you, so that they're not unduly penalised either. Because so it's how do you support a whole ecosystem approach? Not just the benefits for people that want to work reduced hours.
Totally. And the learning we've had from that, the situation that Carolyn raised with full-timers working excessive hours, we've learned not to allow them to bank it. We try to get them to take it the following week. So we don't. We're trying to stop exhaustion. We're trying to stop exhaustion and overwork. And we've got the same issue with young mums who'll work until ridiculous hours of the evening. Carolyn and I pounce on them like a ton of bricks. You know, that's not okay for you. It's okay occasionally, but when do you get any downtime?
Yeah, so and then exhausted the next day.
So we're trying to make sure that overload and overwork is not an issue.
What I love about that story is you are both observing these things. You are both, this is intentional. These are intentional conversations, and the point around the full-timers picking up the part-timers slack is such a real pain point for so many businesses that a lot of full-time women feel shitty about talking about, but at the same time resent it.
Yes.
Because they don't, do you know what I mean? So I think we need to full front into that. So I love that idea that you said, hey, we get this not ideal. What we want is next week when you have a bit of headspace, leave at 3 or whatever it is. You know? I think that's powerful.
And prompt it, but also just say, as Jane's prefaced this whole conversation around trust, is just know that that's permissible, you know, so that you can work it into your diary, so you don't slow up the process being a bottleneck of having to approve someone taking a Friday off. That's the other thing that we would encourage employees to do is show trust and encourage people to do it the way that works for them, because we're all adults, we're all grown-ups. If you want to take a Friday afternoon off to balance the books, so to speak, balance your time, you know that you would need to hand over anything that was urgent, or think when would be the optimal time in which to do that. So people just,
Yeah.
show maturity in those decisions by and large.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it. So
Mhm.
that is so powerful. Thank you both for sharing that story. That is a practical thing that my listeners will take away. This is real talk. This is what really happens, So I really want to thank you for sharing that. Final question for you both. I'm going to give you a magic wand, okay? Because we all love magic wands. And if you think about the motherhood penalty, and the way that I describe the motherhood penalty is that the Grattan Institute in Australia says that over 10 years from the birth of your first child, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, a mother's salary and retirement savings will be penalised up to 55%, and a father's salary will go up. It's called the fatherhood bonus. If we were to smash that as a society, and you think about all the levers we could use: paid parental leave, unpaid work, part-time work, childcare. What do you think the biggest lever is in our society that would make a real dent to this penalty that only mothers are paying? And I'm going to go to Caro first. What would you use your magic wand for, my friend?
For me, I feel like it's a philosophical, societal acceptance of normalisation of flexibility and part-time work. So that is us all not even batting an eyelid if someone wants to work 3 days a week over 5, 4 days over 5, whatever it is. So that could be part-time, hybrid, non-linear careers, so that they are just as valued, and that we don't see them as a diminishment of value just because they're not full-time. So, part-time work is not part-time value. So that's what I'd love, is for us to see it just being embraced across all employers, whether it's public, private sector, not-for-profit, etc. I think that's super important, that we actually just change the narrative, and make it more acceptable for everybody to think about different flexible ways of working. Jane mentioned the example before of a new team member who's recently joined. We couldn't believe it, that when she wanted to work part-time, or at least have some decent flexibility during her week, it wasn't considered, if anything, discouraged. We just think it's absolutely gobsmacking in this day and age. It's just ridiculous. So for me, that's that kind of nationwide normalisation of flexibility.
I love that. Without batting an eyelid. That's a beautiful thing to use your magic wand on. I love it. Jane, what about you, my magic wand person?
Thank you, Emma. I think, just to add to what Caro has said, we both feel that, especially normalising part-time and flexible work for men, I hate to bring it up as a subset, but it feels to us that it needs dealing to as its own evil thing that it is. The fact that men are so stigmatised by, it's just not the norm. It's not the norm to offer part-time or flexible work for men. So as part of what Carolyn said, we feel that that's really important. We also think parental leave equality is really important. So, I mean, that's come a long way since, of course, I didn't get it at all. I had to take my holidays. But Cara and I sort of debated as we were preparing this, what about grandparents? Should grandparents get some parental leave? I don't know. It's like there are bigger circles of caregiving in families than just the parents. And should there be a bit of lateral thinking about that? And we also come back to the hardy old chestnut of better societal childcare support, of course. We've got to have childcare support reflecting the realities of modern families, so that the parents aren't penalised and all children are well looked after. Yeah, those were my thoughts.
They're great thoughts. And I think the childcare thought is particularly pertinent as we are recording this on day 1 of term 4, where thousands of parents around the country will be throwing a mini party.
Very good point. Good point.
Yeah. And I share your, parental leave. Let's get some innovation on this. We're only one of 3 developed nations in the world that does offer no secondary paid government leave, which is bad news bears. But why aren't we a bit more innovative with it? And I mean, Singapore pays grandparents to look after grandchildren.
Wow.
Like that's an example for me of, and there's a lot of things going on with Singapore, but that for me is a society that values caregiving, right? Because it's paid, and it means that they can have parents going out to work. But I think we need more innovation. So I love that, Jane. Thank you so much. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much for sharing your business secret sauce, which is your people strategy. I'm not apologizing for the dozens of CVs that will come in. To Toku, your observations around isn't flexible working just normal, because I know from my clients that it's not. There's plenty of businesses that are doing great stuff, but actually I have people ringing me up crying. They're saying, I can't leave this work because it's 4 days a week and I'll never get it anywhere else, but my boss is awful to me. And I'm like, Bubs, you can get that somewhere else. So I just really love that. I thank you so much for lighting the path for others, for creating a business where you have truly put people at the center. What lucky clients you have, what lucky people you have. And I just want to say thank you very much, Jane and Cara, for your time.
A huge pleasure. Thanks, Em. And just wanting to recognise your mahi too in this space. You're doing remarkable work and it's just fabulous. So we're more than happy to support it and share our reflections too. Thank you for having us on. It's been great.
Love it. Thank you, guys. Onwards and upwards. This podcast was funded by Works for Everyone, a business that is dedicated to supporting working parents and to smashing the motherhood penalty. If this is also your jam, let's stay connected. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for us, Works for Everyone. And if you want more information on how we help businesses put a care wrap around their employees, check us out on worksforeveryone.co.nz. Or if none of these work for you, in the weekends you can find me, Emma McLean, the founder of Works for Everyone, in the queue at Pack and Save Royal Oak or Kmart St Luke's. Onwards!